Welcome to the Other Books podcast, Dr. Eleonore.
Thank you.
Can we start the conversation with, could you recollect your long-term association with India as an academic, as a scholar?
Sure, yeah. Well, I started out studying India and studying about thinking about coming here to study in 2014. I first started studying Tamil and taking visits in the summer to find out more about South India specifically. I thought I might do some anthropological research there for my PhD thesis. My work is on the circus. It is not directly related to Ambedkar, although I also was doing translation work from before then, and we can talk about that. So I started out studying India through languages, mostly, like first Tamil, because studying Malayalam was not possible in the US. And when it became possible, I started studying Malayalam here in Trivandrum. I stayed there first for a summer in 2016, then for a full year in 2018, 2017, 2018. Through being there, I also got to learn more about the culture, got more familiar with Kerala aspects of, Kerala history, aspects of Kerala festivals and culture, diversity, religious diversity. So through this experience of living there, I also became a bit more ready to do my anthropological fieldwork, and I've been coming there since. I settled in Kozhikode for about a year and a half in 2019 and stayed there in beachside. I was living there and going to Telesheri, where my research work mostly developed. And so after that, I continued coming, and so I'm here today.
Today we launched the French translation of Annihilation of Caste by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, which you did. So could you say something about how you came across Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's work?
Sure, yeah. So as I was studying and getting ready to prepare my fieldwork and my thesis, I came across various, political writings about India, especially post-independence or like around the time of independence, which was also contemporary with my more like historical anthropological research. So Ambedkar was obviously one of the figures that I encountered then. This Annihilation of Caste book, it introduces a lot of concepts and historical actors I wasn't so familiar with, like his debate and this critical discussion of, examination of the Arya Samajist and Arya Samaj, concept of Chaturvarnya, the long discussion with Gandhi that is done through the Bahujan journal. Like all of these things I first encountered like as a student, like I was reading these texts and also comparing them or like understanding them in context in relation to Nehru's writings or Gandhi's writings. So I never thought I would get to translate Dr. Ambedkar's work when I was learning about it and reading such an important text. So it's a big honor for me that I get to do this and introduce these concepts into French, because people in France are not so familiar with this context. And as our guest, today, Mina Kandasamy said, like French people have an idea of India that does not really integrate all of these historical elements. So I think it's very important that the text is now being made available into French, and I'm happy to be part of this project.
How relevant is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar for the French audience particularly and the European readers in general?
Well, I think it's important in several ways, and I'm not sure I can speak to all of them. Some people are obviously better placed to, as Ambedkarite activists or scholars, to speak to that. But I can say one of the ways that it's important, and as an anthropologist, I feel I can say with confidence, is France has a lot of class separation. Like the stratification of France is very acute, although it doesn't have names and categories and labels in the way that caste has created in India, right? And I think by learning better about a different system where social inequality is categorized and lives on also through like a different form of community making than the one that exists in France. There are very important lessons to be learned in just this task of comparison. And so having the texts available in French is helpful in that way. I think another way in which a second point about the importance of Annihilation of Caste and having this text available in French is that it will project a more lively and fuller image of what India's history has been in the 20th century. It will help people, develop a fuller picture of what the society looked like at the time in 1930s and 1940s. Like, French people have a limited imagination of what that could be like, and it mostly comes through colonialism. And so seeing these political actors, local political actors, their approach towards the English Raj that was going on, and also their approach towards other political figures that exist in India at the time, I think that's really important to project like a sort of lively image of the history. And of course, French historians, they're very aware of this. Like French historians who specialize on the history of India, they already know all this. But this is not for them. It's also for just common readers, students in political science, like anyone interested in India as a country, as a cultural notion, can now read this text and find out a bit more.
What is the availability of caste literature in French language, especially writings of Ambedkar?
Well, some scholars are working on this at an academic level. Obviously, Christophe Jaffrelot is one of the scholars that is a familiar name to many people and has written extensively about the biography of Ambedkar. There are other scholars who are conducting sociological or anthropological fieldwork around caste, especially in Maharashtra or Madhya Pradesh. Maybe not as much in the south, although scholars like Zoe Headley look at the caste at the level of Panchayat and in the legal systems in Tamil Nadu. So there is a lot of work available for scholars, but that caste literature that is more on the activist side of things is perhaps a bit less translated. Even I would say the literature that's available in English that was published in India on caste, that may not have traveled that much in French circles beyond very specialized people.
The Europe, especially the popular culture in Europe, often sees India as a land of spirituality, and often, as Meena said, exoticizes and romanticizes it. So the caste is very invisible often. So how do you look at it as someone who has lived in India and worked on it?
Well, I think I'm an anthropologist, so my vision on it may not matter that much. Like for me, it was built into my research. I studied the circus communities, and I could see the way the Kerala caste system it has an influence on who gets to do what at the level of this very niche, very particular profession. It's present in that domain, just as it is in every other domain, and it's something that I try to write about in my work to some extent, although my work is about other issues as well. When it comes to changing the perceptions that people in France may have about caste, I think it's important for them to see that there are people like Dr. Ambedkar who have produced, these discourse, a lot of discourse and led political activities around caste that will help French people see beyond. We have this text Homo Hierarchicus by Louis Dumont, which is a classic anthropological text on caste. And it's a text that is written around the time when Ambedkar is writing, I think in 1947 maybe, or 49. And it projects an image of caste that is very much like it's always been there, it's never going to change. People accept caste people accept that there are categories of people who are deemed untouchable. And it's very striking that a text like this is contemporary with Ambedkar's Annihilation of Caste speech, and that it does not take that into account. It only takes it into account briefly, just to dismiss it as something that won't last. But now we're, not quite 100 years after, but like we're many decades after, and we can see like the significance of Annihilation of Caste and the fact that there's this, Dumont was predicting that like the caste system is unchanging, but at the level of politics, it's not exactly what's happening. It's just that like it's a very lively fight that is continuing to happen, and Ambedkar is a source of inspiration for so many in that.
Can you also speak about your translation experience, the process, and your encounter with other books team, the association?
Well, I feel very lucky that I've gotten to work with the team at Other Books. It was an honor to be approached to do this translation work. I have, prior to translating Annihilation of Caste, I've translated a lot of essays, actually, mostly anthropological literature, from English to French and French to English. So the possibility of translating Annihilation of Caste was especially exciting because although it's a speech, it's also the speech of someone who is very steeped in a kind of cosmopolitan research and scholarly culture. There's a lot of references to American pragmatism, which is, something that Ambedkar encountered while he was studying in Columbia. There is a lot of intellectual history and constitutionalists from England that are also cited in this text. And so it's, in a way, it's a social science text, but it's also a political text. And that was new for me, because the other texts I've translated did not have that dimension of speaking to a larger audience. So it was a very exciting text. At the same time, it posed specific challenges because it's not a text that's addressed to scholars only. And at the same time, it uses a lot of words that French people won't be familiar with. So I enjoyed this challenge quite a lot of figuring out what needs footnotes, what needs to be translated into French, what needs to remain in the original language in which it's written. I know that the Persian translator had similar issues, and she addressed them in a different way. My approach was to put a lot of footnotes. And even in that, like coming back to the experience of working with Other Books, the person that I was most in contact with besides Oswaf Sir was Jalal, and he's been amazing at making sure that we integrate any sort of final touches, like revising the text together, making the final corrections together. So I felt like it was a very supportive team and good experience.
Finally, could you also talk about your doctoral thesis, then the ethnographic work in Talasheri?
Sure.
About the circus?
Yeah. So I completed my dissertation in 2022, and I'm now working on a book project that's based on the fieldwork that I completed at that time, or for that thesis project. Like I mentioned, I studied Malayalam for quite some time in Trivandrum, and this was building up to conducting interviews with people who were once part of traveling circuses across India, like Jumbo Circus, Gemini Circus, Bharat Circus, many others, which happen to all mostly be based in Talasheri. And when I mean based, it's of course the managers and the owners of these circuses are from there, but all of the workers at some point. If you look at the history of the circus from the early 20th century up until the 1980s, a majority of the circus workers, like artists, staff members, are also Malayalis from that region only. So my work consisted in conducting interview, sometimes aided was my assistant Shruti, who came with me, and we interviewed these people about their personal history, how how is it for them to have been part of something that is itinerant like the circus and then be back in a place that they haven't really grown up in? Because, you know, if you join the circus, you're joining as a small kid, and then you come back later in your life, maybe because you're getting married or you're having your first child. And trying to track that experience of becoming sedentary again after being itinerant for a long time was something that I was interested in, and that involves, you know, there's a material aspect of this where people have a lot of pictures that they're willing to talk about, and that starts to shape their memory of this experience of circulating around. So I was interested in the historical narratives that they're building, both at an individual level about their own personal lives, but also as a collective. Like there are many people in Telesheri who can remember that history together, and the fact that they are connecting and talking about it together produces effects in the historical narrative. Certain figures become more important. I was very interested in that process. So it's still something that I'm working on, along with like looking at circus shows, how they've evolved. Certain acts have a long history that is not written, so I'm looking at that too. Like circuses from Kerala have traveled to the USSR, they've traveled to Singapore and to Egypt, and along their travels, they picked up new items that did not necessarily exist, and that's also one aspect I'm interested in, like who keeps the memory of these items alive. So my research is about this sort of questions.
And in the contemporary scenario, it's declining, right?
Well,
what's your take on that?
That is a good question, because my work is around this idea of disappearance also. Like when I visited Telesheri, like a lot of the circus owners and some of the artists would be very nostalgic about the circus. But from the standpoint also of like, this is the end of their career. So they're looking back at a certain phase of their life. And to me, like, of course, the circus is a precarious object. So it always can go bankrupt, and it can always close. And it's, you know, it's not that like the circuses today have the size and scope of circuses in the 1950s, where they were much larger businesses. But I wouldn't say that they are disappearing. Like they have changed form, but it's a very it's a medium like circus arts that really can transform. And you might see some of the items that were once shown in circus on TV, or like you know, alongside an MC at a function, and I think that kind of brings some life to it. And also, of course, like these circuses like Bombay, Jumbo, they're still around. You know, they come for festivals and people expect them, and children form memories of circus at them. So I wouldn't say, I mean, I want to stay neutral as to the question of whether they're disappearing, because it's really important for me how circus people talk about that and account for that themselves.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the conversation.